either on Crowdcast or on Facebook live stream, and we're also live streaming onto YouTube and hopefully onto LinkedIn, although that link doesn't always work, so we'll see, won't we? Otherwise we'll just put it onto LinkedIn afterwards. So welcome to my wonderful guest today, which is Dr. Mathew Anchery, who is an Ayurvedic doctor.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I was introduced to Dr. Mathew by Edith and Fran, who both are clients of yours, I believe, and the whole concept of Ayurvedic medicine, and I've been fascinated by it. So I thought it'd be really particularly appropriate, as it transpires, to have this conversation. And we were just having a quick chat in the green room about the importance of how you think about things, especially now we've had the announcement about what Boris's roadmap is. So we're going to talk a bit about that and how Ayurvedic thoughts and practices can help us with that. But first of all, it'd be really cool if you could introduce yourself, and I will share on the screen your page, although everyone who's watching this live on Crowdcast can see a little button at the bottom of the screen saying where you can visit Dr. Mathew's website, and you can book an appointment with him on there. So you can click on that button, and I'm just going to share your interview on our website. So if people are wondering all about you, they can go and quickly have a look on the website, and there's a lot more. You've answered a few questions to give some context to who you are and why what Ayurvedic medicine is on there. So yeah, anyone watching now and is interested, you can go straight to the website and look at the interview page, or go to Dr. Mathew's page. But hopefully you'll just sit and listen to us, because that'll be so much more interesting and than watching those. Right, I'm just going to close the window. There we go. So yeah, so anyone who's watching on this live streaming and wants to know a bit more about what this chat is all about, go to the website and look at the Pure website, or go to Dr. Mathew's website and have a quick read. So can you tell us what Ayurvedic medicine is in simple English?
Definitely. I will try my best. Ayurveda, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me on this.
Oh, you're welcome. You're
more than welcome. Sunny day.
I know.
And I'm glad that anybody who is with us listening live is spending that time, hopefully also gain a little bit of nuggets of information and knowledge from us. So yeah, so the task of understanding Ayurveda, it took me about 5 to 6 years of study to understand what it is. So I will try my best to make it understandable in like 5 minutes, maybe.
Perfect.
So, yeah, basically it's traditional medicine practiced in the Indian subcontinent, South Asia sort of region. And the textbooks that we follow to learn this science is about 2000 years old, written in an ancient language called Sanskrit, which is almost like how Latin is in the West. Sanskrit was sort of a technical language, not used in mainstream very much. And we still study this language to enter into this science and understand their way of living, and learn small bits and pieces how we can sort of apply it in our current lifestyle. When I say it is traditional medicine, I don't always see it as just medicine, how we see it nowadays. I mostly see it as a sort of a way of living, or simply put, I usually say it's like the user manual. So the user manual that comes with a mobile phone or a electronic gadget, that's exactly what Ayurveda is. It's a user manual to our body and our mind. And the user manual always tells you not just about troubleshooting when things go wrong, what to do. That's just a small part of it. The bigger part of a user manual is how to understand this equipment better in a different way. And also to sort of, it has those very interesting pictures marking, yeah, this is the wire, this is switch, etc. Similarly, Ayurveda also has a very elaborate description of how to understand our body, our mind, our gut, and see how it is connected with each other. And the user manual also tells us how to use this machine properly, not just like use it, but use it properly. And the focus is on mainly on prevention of issues. And if that fails due to any reason, environmental or internal sort of anomalies, then you go to this troubleshooting where problems are understood and solutions are found from the nature itself, trying to see what kind of plants or natural materials can be introduced into diet, introduced into one's lifestyle, and how it can be sorted out. So it is quite a compilation of experience from many thousand years, because it's very important, because we human beings things like last 2000 years is what defines us. But Homo sapiens, exactly the same brain size, same similar anatomy, lived on this planet for 500,000 years. So surviving that long in an environment, changing environment, gives you a lot of information which we have gained and sort of marked it into our genes, and we use it as we need it. But this is sort of an experience codified into a certain way of living, so that we focus more on prevention rather than react to symptoms and try to sort that out when it happens. So it's very sort of interesting way of living, I would say.
I'm just imagining this user manual now is going to be like this big.
It's huge.
Huge, like 5,000 years of a user manual.
so it's a very interesting thought, because that nowadays we handle so much of data. So imagine our phones and how much of photographs we have collected. It's always to the limit. Similarly, this much of information without any photograph printing or that much of materials, it's very hard to transmit or store or do anything with it. So it's very interesting when we study this 2000 years old textbooks. They are written as poems. They are written in a particular tune. And most of the time, the study of these books, which are huge, you actually learn the poem and the whole lyrics of it and understand the meaning later. It's a very interesting way of studying. You study the whole chapter as a song without knowing what it means. There is a literal meaning, but then you have to understand it based on that era's lifestyle, kind of food that was available 2000 years, which are all very difficult to understand now. But then you put your mind to it and analyze it, and then it makes sense as a medicine. So it's a very interesting way of studying, where you have to learn it all by heart. I can't actually recollect all of it, but we had to study it all by heart to go through this whole process of learning Ayurveda.
Wow. So you kind of like absorb it into your being, like we do music and memories and experiences, and they go deep into our subconscious, and that's what our brain uses when we're trying to resource and react and find resources to make understandings in the world. Ayurveda gives you another layer of that.
And also that makes it very easy to make it relevant for the current era, because you are analyzing using your experience and knowledge, which is modern, which is from era. The information is from the past. You're not literally translating it. You're using your layer of experience to make sense out of it, which makes it relevant forever.
It's like a giant algorithm, isn't
Yes.
it? So Ayurveda was actually Apple. It was like a giant search engine. But 2,000 years ago, I think, there's something to be said for that, isn't there? It was the original like search engine, really, of the processing part of, what goes into you. And I think we've forgotten quite a lot of that in our modern culture. We've forgotten a lot about where we came from and all of that, you know, what do they call it? The reptilian brain, don't they?
Mm.
That we're born with, and
The
that
limbic sort of system.
yeah, we've forgotten that that's all there and it's available to us. So Ayurveda lets us access that and as a resource.
Yeah, so there are definitely patterns that the nature exhibits in different forms, and whether it is, say, 7 colors in a rainbow, or there are finite patterns around you, or if you try to analyze something around you, 5,000 years ago, you didn't have any sophisticated instruments to examine what elements it's made of. You use your senses, and that limits you to 5 different perceptions or 5 different points towards everything. And 5 senses play a very important role in almost all traditional medicines. If you really think about it, traditional Chinese medicine has 5 elements in it. Ayurvedic medicines in its base believes that everything is made of 5 elements. The names are different, but Tibetan medicine, all of these have exactly 5 elements. And that number basically comes from our 5 senses. We are limited to understanding everything in 5 different ways. It's very interesting to see these patterns, and these patterns are very important for understanding our interaction with the nature. So we are thinking about living in tune with nature. We need a proper science to establish how we interact with each other, and that's what basically, that's the algorithm in Ayurveda. Defines who you are. It's almost like I usually say, like 5,000 years ago, if you have a particular root tuber or a fruit, it comes without a label.
Yes.
No label. So if you decide to eat it, for your survival, it's very important for you to understand its taste, understand what it does to your stomach, and then record that information in a way that everybody else will also understand, so they can also continue. So if it gives a tummy ache, they have to actually communicate it easily to next person. And that means a lot of attention is paid to smaller details, like when you consume that fruit, or what do you mix that fruit with. And a lot of thought goes into understanding why is that happening. And this framework which Ayurveda holds on, that helps to sort of explain all these questions. And I won't go very deep into the theory or the philosophy. It's like a meditation, can put you to sleep immediately. So I won't do that, but it's basically defining that relationship with everything around us, and in a more simplified way.
I quite like the idea of being put to sleep after yesterday's announcement. So I was saying to you, I had quite an instinctive reaction of anxiety after those announcements yesterday, and I have spoken to a couple of people, and they, you know, had a similar kind of response to it, because and that, so it's interesting to think about the slowing, because I got a sensation of a runaway train. I got a sensation of overwhelm immediately. And we were talking about the fact that as human beings, we don't like change.
Yes, definitely. I think the biggest cause of sort of stress is that we get comfortable in patterns that are suitable for us, and is sort of able to think about something more different or challenging because we are comfortable with what we do already. So that continues, and then we add more complexities to that layer. If the way we live, the pace that we experience life is suddenly changed, which happens with the lockdown, otherwise there's nothing actually. In reality, it's a good thing. We are slowing down, we are paying more attention to what we eat, there's more time to spend with family, and all those good things are there. But we immediately feel the stress because our basic building block of what we were doing outside has now changed. So we have to look back at our old pattern. And I think with last one whole year of pandemic experience, we all have reset our building blocks, changed our priorities. And I hear a lot of people saying about, finding pleasure in small things. which is exactly what we used to do for 300,000, 400,000 years. Those small things were extremely pleasant. But then we lost it because we decided to go on a slightly more fast pace, or in a good word, be productive kind of a lifestyle. And that took us in a different way, and we were changed. And now this change is also extremely stressful. But like I was telling when we spoke initially, it's not the slowing down. It's not that part which we will be worried of. The most worrying part is the speeding up, because from now onwards, it feels like how human life has sped up during the last 100 or 200 years. It will further speed up, like the speed of the vaccine, how fast it was developed, the speed of how it is implemented, the speed of how we communicate compared to sending a letter to someone and waiting for their response, to sort of doing an email or a video call, or any method of communication which is immediate. So we have, without knowing, got into a much more faster, which we could have not imagined maybe even 50 years ago. We have already got into it. It doesn't feel awkward at all. We feel quite natural in that. But now slowing down becomes even more difficult, which is the root cause of a lot of different mental health related issues or stress related issues. Because my teacher uses an example of how mind actually perceives stress and different aspects which are negative to our mental health. It's almost like a pendulum, our mind. And the pendulum moves between two poles, and one of these poles is our inner consciousness, or the spiritual being inside us, which is quite sort of opposite to what we experience through the five senses, which is on the other side. So this side is our soul or spirit, or that pure consciousness that we have inside us, which we experience when we do, say, a meditation or prayer or anything which closes down the chatterbox, the five senses. Suddenly the pendulum moves this way. And the speciality is, when your attention, or your mind as we call it, moves here to the soul, there is very less pain and very less pleasure. That's the identifying feature of this land. Once you reach there, you don't get agitated, you don't get that much pleasure also. And opposite direction, where we are in a fast-paced lifestyle, is highly prone to both pain and pleasure. You experience more pleasure, but the other side of it is pain is also augmented, and not just physical pain, mental pain also. So stress factors which we are not used to is now something that we have to deal with. Say, I don't think anybody would worry about a say mobile phone notification, because we are used to it now. There is an email or things like that. Imagine if that brings us the news that next 14 days we'll have to quarantine. A notification pops up. That's an immense stress and immense change in our way of living. And such kind of stress is huge pain, which is the opposite side of the huge pleasure that communication gives us. So what I mean to say is, not to go off the grid is not the message. The message is basically that going faster is not something we need to worry of, which is where everybody is leading us to. Going slower is where we have to pay attention to, and that gives us all these advantages, which it's very hard to realize when we are going so fast. So looking at a cart or a slowly moving vehicle in a bullet train, it seems almost ridiculous. Why would anybody take that to reach anywhere? But they are enjoying the journey while we are just focusing on the destination. We
That's
can't
an amazing analogy.
experience anything, but they are enjoying every bit of it. So in effect, your what you gain per second, because time is the biggest resource, is much more when you walk slower, when you move slower in life. And there are other things that comes with it, like I said, food without label. You pay attention to things, you see uniqueness in every individual. So when I do a consultation in a family, almost certain thing to happen in the next 2 weeks is that another person in the family will come up with the question, I can see this pattern. That person is actually eating this way and doing this. I am different. What is my pattern? What should I do? So it's almost sort of something that we can intuitively tap into, and we almost do it without knowing. But the basic concepts of 5 elements or the body types in Ayurveda usually gives you an easy way to decode this connection between us and food, us and nature, and gives us easy way to apply it. So these are things which we will instinctively do anyway if you are living in a slower paced world. Like before coming to UK, I didn't have to think about eating seasonally, because the village where we lived in India, that's all you get. Seasonal is what comes to you. You can't get out of season products. You just have to dream about the mango season coming next year. So eating seasonally is not a problem, and you actually know that you have to wait for it. So that is only part of that slowing down process, and we can do that. It feels unnatural, but it is highly, highly beneficial, I think, especially in a preventive health point of view. It's very important.
So the advice you would give people now, as we are kind of like, we've now got a kind of like a date, we know where we're going with the next massive change in our lifestyles, is instead of worrying about the speeding up, which is inevitable, embed some practices now that help you to slow down, like eating seasonally, considering the food that you're eating, look at it, take the bike or the foot instead of the car. You know, just, I know with artists live quite an isolated and slower life than the average person anyway, because obviously they're in their studios working. But I am also aware that there is a massive train, an industry that they have to jump onto that has been shut down for the last year, the exhibitions, art fairs, etc. And that is likely to really ramp up, because not only have they missed the opportunity of making money from selling their work through those mediums of galleries, art fairs, etc., but the businesses that rely on them and all the people that are in that industry of art fairs, etc., haven't been able to make any money either. So they're going to become, there's going to become quite a lot of noise, I think. And I think it's important for people to understand how they can cope with it. You know, some coping techniques of how they, because they're going to feel quite pressured, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I think being artistic, that quality itself comes with certain nature inside you. It's not actually something that it can be cultivated, but while you're cultivating, you are actually sort of there is a certain energy or a body type that gets influenced the most, which we call as the air type or vata, which is where the thoughts and the ideas move like air. Going out of the box becomes natural in the thinking process rather than focusing on one aspect on its own or just problem solving. It is quite far and wide, and that has an advantage as well as disadvantage. The advantage is the creativity is something that flows naturally if you tap into yourself, don't have to actually fully rely on external stimulus, but just looking at inwards into you. The disadvantage will be that if you are not utilizing your creative energy in a proper way. This is very interesting because art therapy is also quite an active method of treating. And what art therapy in an Ayurvedic point of view does is to help the person use that energy in a more expressive way, which is linked to the most important action of letting go, where we actually gain all these negative vibes from, say, an announcement or lockdown on different aspects related to external environment. This is a method of letting go also for an artistic person. And if that's not happening, then the mind goes creatively like creatively worrying. Worrying also can be in a creative ways, that you can actually go really far and deep into something which has not happened or may not happen, or may happen, but then you are actually getting all the negative energy because of the mind being creatively involved with that idea. So it's very important to sort of continue with your own practice of expressing. That is basically art. I understand it as expressing. So that shouldn't stop. You should always introspect yourself to see in reality who you are. And that's a journey that continues whatever happens outside. And this will help you. Your knowledge of yourself and your knowledge of your expression or your own art, in my view, will make you more resilient against external factors. We can't change these negative impacts of closure of the exhibitions, etc. That will be there. How negatively that's going to impact your mind and your health can be reduced or restricted to a lesser sort of extent if you are much more connected or aware of your own self. That's what I always believe, that you have to continue that journey inwards to deal with things happening outside you.
I was really fascinated to listen to that, because you were saying about this character type of a creative, about the air and the flow, and then how if they get overwhelmed by something, it can make them stuck. It can create this like creative block, which I see so often, that there'll be a trigger of some anxiety, external thing. Or creators will find that their life becomes out of balance. So they're spending less time on their artwork and too much time on the business side of and so their body is out of balance. And if they go out of balance, then everything kind of spirals into a very bad, out of control, and then their mind spirals with it. And then I have to step in and we have to bring them back. And so balance is incredibly important for all of us, but most especially for creatives in this very busy world where they are expected to do their own marketing, do all the business side. And I think artists, I'm sad to say, aren't taught a lot of this stuff, so don't know when they should outsource, and they don't outsource quickly enough. And understanding when you should outsource so that you can retain that flow is a skill, isn't it?
Definitely. I think, like I said, if you try to sort of reinvent the whole machine yourself, that will always put extra stress and effort on you. Whereas if you have sort of oiled machines available, like say a facilitator, or for rediscovering yourself, it could be methods of meditation, eating practices, or certain lifestyle changes like fasting and diet related routines. If you have these tools, they are well established methods, and they can always help you go that way. Most of us will survive with some stress. We will still survive, but these are methods which was developed by people experiencing similar feelings and going through similar situations, and they can be quite sort of readily applied into one's life. And that's also equally sort of important aspect of taking care of oneself.
Yeah, self-care. I know often people will say to me, oh, you work with creatives. Why do you spend so much time looking at the holistic side with meditation and with Ayurvedic medicine? And it's exactly that. It's about the fact that most of the characters, personalities within this industry are in that water kind of creative, and it stops flowing. And it's finding methods for them to help them reignite the flow and get back in flow. And a lot of those methods that I have found to be the most successful for the creatives that I work for are around meditation, getting out in nature, walking, sitting quietly, turning off all devices and just letting your mind wander freely and notice what you notice. And all of these are within that kind of alternative, therapeutic range, holistic range. And you mentioned there food. So I'd be really interested for you to just explain to us more about that, the fasting, all the various food journeys you can take to help you get back in flow.
Yes, definitely. So I think the first thing when we think about food that comes to our mind is having a balanced diet. And the way we understand balanced diet is based on nutrients. Nowadays we know about carbohydrate, proteins, healthy fat, all micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, etc., etc. And we judge food based on the nutritional value and the label and everything that comes with it. But imagine 2000 to 5000 years ago, they didn't have any of this information. They didn't know about any of these. Still, the human race managed to survive, because if we really think about it intuitively, we know the idea of a balanced diet, and that comes from our perception of taste. And we always sort of struggle with cravings, and the opposite of it is when somebody prescribes an herbal medicine, it tastes horrible. We don't want to take that horrible tasting medicine. That always is there. Our taste buds are telling us about what is our connection with food, and we can't take, say for example, even if somebody craves sugar or sweet, we can't eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner just cake. We can try, but
Really?
we'll
Coming
we'll
on.
struggle. I don't want anybody to try it at home, but it's a theoretical assumption. So I think intuitively, the Ayurvedic concept of balanced diet is a balance of all flavors. So if we generally sort of follow a diet which is, say, predominantly savory, sour, and sweet, that is sufficient to only nourish the body. That is only sufficient to give us energy and the nutrients. But there should be the elements of spicy or pungent, bitter, and astringent flavors, which are known to be detoxifying and repairing in nature. That's why it's important to have, even if it doesn't taste sweet or nice, green leafy vegetables and different other elements that we include, spices and things, because it helps with the other benefit of food, which is not just nourishing. It's also important in helping our body recover and repair. If we ignore that part, then we'll have to take external help from, say, supplements or medicines to do that work for us, which all initially came from plant-based compounds and chemicals, and they are all bitter chemicals. Interestingly, in my childhood, I remember when we go to a GP or a modern doctor in India, they used to mix different mixtures and give it as a liquid to drink. And there is a cough mixture, there is a cold mixture, different mixtures. They mix it up in interesting bottles. Looks like alchemy, and they always taste horrible. We haven't started at that time the process of adding sugary syrup to everything, every medicine. So and that sort of reminds us that we need that bitterness in the diet itself to balance our healing and balance our recovery process. So that's one very interesting concept, that all 6 flavors, sweet, sour, salty, bitter, pungent or spicy, and astringent, sort of lentily, pulses kind of flavors, also should be there in everyday diet. The second concept is that every person is unique. When I say unique, it's not sort of the personality of that person. That's one reflection of it. There is also a gut nature, how your digestive system behaves, what you're really attracted to, what kind of flavors you crave, what you don't, and your body has a certain nature. I don't want to go very deep into the philosophy, but simple example is that if your nature is to sort of feel cold very easily, cold hands and feet. If you have a drier skin tendency, that you can in winter especially get really dry skin, and your joint starts making clicky noise. These are all different expression of dryness in your body. Then a diet which is purely juice based and salad based, even though we understand it as healthy, will be not suitable for you. In fact, you will benefit from having more soups and stews and warm and lipid rich, oil rich food. Even though it might feel like heavy or oily, would benefit you better compared to having just soups and salads, which are cold and dry in nature, which will make your body still feel more cold and affect your circulation, create more dryness. And that dryness is understood as a causative factor for different issues related to bones and joints, nervous system, if ignored for a very long time. So externally, it's just reflecting there. Internally, it can reflect as a constipation sometimes. So it could be any form, and it progresses into health issue. Similarly, somebody who has an acidic nature or fire-like nature will benefit from all those salads and juices instead of having too much of spices or alcohol, coffee, things which are acidic and warming in nature will sort of trigger or lead to accumulate more imbalance and lead to inflammation like symptoms. And that can manifest anywhere depending on where is the weak point, whether you have a past injury or a past health issue. The inflammation will come and manifest there. If it's a systemic sort of imbalance, the manifestation can be anywhere. So things like that are always taken into account when your long-term diet and lifestyle is planned. Most of the time, intuitively, a lot of our nature will be to focus and understand and put it already into practice. But when we are in that bullet train, we just eat what is provided in the train. Or if we are in the flight, we just eat those horrible sandwiches because we are in a hurry. But if we are in a more slower paced sort of environment, we have the ability to look at what is available, what's seasonal, and how do you feel. You have to actually, you have got time to pay attention. See, a lot of people actually change to cooking at home during this lockdown. That's not just because you've got time. That's only one factor. Another factor is that if you continue to eat like when you were working and busy outside the home, you can't distract yourself from the discomfort that it's giving you in the form of bloatedness, or you have to pay attention to it because you have got time now. That's also a reason why many of us have paid attention to what we are eating, made changes in diet. And for a lot of people who are listening now or later as a recording, I would say that the knowledge that you have gained during this lower paced time is actually Ayurveda. Don't look anywhere else for it, and just continue to sort of follow that similar kind of pattern, and the knowledge that you've gained from this, don't let go of it. Like you mentioned, fix time in your day, because a ritual or a routine is mainly useful, because if we rely on external stimulus to decide what to do next, we will be always carried away by these stimulus, and there will be no time to pay attention to your own self. So there should be pre-set timings and rituals that you take part, whether it is like a once in 3 days, if you decided to do a self oil application and a hot bath, especially in winter, it will help your circulation. It sort of feels like a extravagant experience, but it's actually quite good in terms of helping your circulation, helping your skin, and may actually prevent joint pains and other issues in the future. So there's nothing wrong in actually continuing these kinds of practices that you might have actually started to experience now. And that's actually most important, actually, in terms of Ayurveda, is to pay attention to what your body actually likes and continue it as a conversation. Don't try to take information from, say, internet or a book to follow in your lifestyle. You can try out things, definitely, but long-term practice should be based on how your body is actually communicate or responding to it. It sort of has to be a dialogue rather than just you giving instruction to your
I
own
love
self.
that, having a conversation with your own body and then doing something ritualistically. And on Monday, so throughout March and April and May, we'll be doing clubhouses for all the members and for anyone else who wants to join us on Crowdcast here. And the very first one is on time management, because I just think it's not just about managing the time around your work, it's about managing the time around your health and blocking out ritualistic time. As you say, you know, I do that. I block out time for meditation. Every day I block out 3 times a week for a particular type of exercise that I do, and it's cast in stone, and I won't move it because I know it makes me feel better and everything functions properly. So no matter what, now they're blocked in. So we're going to be talking about more about that on Monday in the clubhouse, everyone. So, you know, anyone who's interested in watching this, we'll talk more about time blocking and rituals and putting in time for gratitude and meditation, and because they help you stay in flow. And I know everyone thinks, how does this apply to creatives? But it's because it helps you, because of your nature. These things help you stay healthy, obviously, and that means that you can be more of what you want to be, but it also helps you stay in flow, and flow is the holy grail for artists.
Yeah.
It's the thing that they're all looking for. How do I get there and how do I stay there? And you've just told them, listen to your body, have a conversation with yourself, listen to it properly, close off the other senses, and then understand what your body needs and do more of it and make it into a ritual.
Exactly. And I think that's also the first step towards, once you start this process and understand your body and maintain that conversation, the next step is to interact better with your environment, with nature, understand how the change in weather is influencing you, or anticipate how this change is going to affect your health physically and mentally, and what you can do as a preparation to sort of balance it. There is multiple levels of application. Once you start this process of having this conversation with yourself, you then apply it to sort of seasonal routines or changes in diet according to seasonal changes and changes within your body. So there are a lot of different factors that can make it much more it's an ongoing journey, an interesting journey, rather than just a simple process. It's sort of a journey, and it's most of the Ayurvedic or traditional natural medicines are rooted from imitating nature. So looking at nature and finding out how nature behaves or how an animal behaves. Like for example, I recently sort of read about there is a herb in Ayurveda called Sarpagandha. That's the Sanskrit name, Sarpagandha. It has an active ingredient called reserpine, and for a very long time, reserpine was used as a compound for preparing high blood pressure medication. And reserpine in nature, it has a very important story that elephants, when they are actually they move in family groups, and the male, once they actually reach a certain age, they actually break away from the main group to make another group of himself when he's sort of growing up into that adult alpha male age. And when that break happens, it's quite a big turmoil. And this elephant goes really crazy and mad and sort of clears out big part of a forest himself to prove that he is strong, some kind of. Anyway, this during this action, it always ends with the elephant eating this plant and sleeping for more than a day. It sort of induces a calmness and sleeping pattern. And ancient traditional medicine people have seen this, and then they actually incorporated in people who were experiencing hyper sort of activity or tension, headaches and things due to that. They never could measure blood pressure, but signs of high blood pressure or things that go along with high blood pressure, and that was treated using this herb. And now we take some element out of it or compound out of it and then use it for one particular aspect. So it's very interesting when we imitate nature, or when we use, say, for example, spices. Traditionally, spices, almost all of them were used not just for flavoring, it's also to preserve food. If you actually apply all the spices on a meat, for example, it will stay fresh for slightly longer than it would in a normal case. So that application of spices, now we understand spices has good amount of antioxidants which prevent oxidative damage, and it continues that function in a living tissue also. If you consume food with spices, and I'm not talking about chili or like hot spices, but flavorful spices including turmeric and ginger and different kinds of other spices, they actually, that antioxidant value helps preserve your body tissues from damage, whether it is from oxygen radicals, whether it is from stress related hormones, whether it is from overuse, wear and tear, any kinds of action. Normally it would create an anomaly, but by having a diet which is healing as well as nourishing, not just nourishing, you actually prevent the illness. And prevention was very important in ancient time, because I don't know, the life expectancy used to be like until 18th century, which used to be like 30 years. That's the average life expectancy, and there is very less chance to do anything once a symptom appear. So all the focus was naturally on developing strength and resilience and preventing. It's not because they actually understood that prevention is better than cure. That was the only way. That was the only way you could survive at the time. And now we have this sort of collected knowledge from all these times how to prevent illness, even though we don't need it. That's why we are ignoring it. We can treat symptoms quite well nowadays. That's why we can afford to ignore these. But with this current pandemic and situation that we are through, we do realize that prevention is also important. We can't ignore it completely. We need to maintain good resilience and strength, good immunity, rather than rely on medical system to help us. That the system is there to help us in emergency. We shouldn't be relying on it to deal with everyday nutritional and lifestyle related disorders like blood pressure, diabetes. All of these are now understood as very much connected to our lifestyle and the changes that have brought into our lifestyle. So there's a lot that we can do. I'm not saying not to take any blood pressure medication. I'm saying while we are taking that, there is some important role you can play yourself together with, and that cannot be ignored, I think.
No, and also, prevention is, as you say, prevention is always better than cure. And now, I have, just listening to you now, I have a greater knowledge of why when I eat certain things I feel better, and when I eat other things I don't feel great. And obviously that's going to affect my productivity and my creativity. So yeah, listen to yourself. We've got some questions.
Okay.
Always love some questions. Edith is saying, please can you give us some more information about the 3 types, the doshas?
Yes, definitely. So if you are ready for that.
We are ready.
Doshas are basically not 3 different body types, even though we always call them like that. It's basically 3 set of functions that we see that needs to be in proper balance to define or understand a person to be very or properly healthy. So health in Ayurveda is defined as 3 dosha balance. And the 3 set of functions are, the first one is Vata dosha or movements. So it's connected to bones and joints, nervous system, movement does not just indicate physical movement, it's also the movement of ideas and thoughts, creative thinking. It's related to circulation and movement of blood, movement of food through the digestive system. So all form of movement and that kinetic energy passing through our body, we categorize it together, compare it to the element air, and call it as vata. So a person predominant in air energy it doesn't mean that the other energies are absent. It's just that predominance is there. We call them a vata body type person, and you will see the reflection of air in their behavior, digestive system, nature, ability, all of that. So vata tendency will make the person go like air, quite dry and cold. So the tendency to gain weight will be slower, losing weight will be much more easier. Vata tends to create dryness, like I said, anywhere in the body, skin, joints, constipation tendency. It can create coldness, and that's not actually, we all are exactly same temperature. Some of us feels quite easily cold.
Me, I feel the cold really,
Yes,
really
so
badly.
the reason is not a change in temperature. It's mainly related to movement. It's mainly related to how heat is moving efficiently from core or muscles to extremities. And when that is inefficient, when movement is affected, that's when we feel cold, mostly cold hands and feet, or circulation causing lower blood pressure tendency. And coldness can also affect our digestive fire. So the ability to metabolize, or the metabolic rate as a whole, also will be slightly under pressure in a way when you are of naturally a vata air-like tendency. And that helps with definitely helps with creativity. It has all different good aspects to it. The second body type or second functional aspect is compared to fire, and we call it pitta. Pitta is like pita bread, P-I-T with an extra T, P-I-T-T-A. Pitta is generally related to all the transformation functions happening in the body. So fire is not just about burning. When we see fire in nature, it's basically something transforming into something else, and energy being released, say paper transforming into cellulose, transforming into carbon, and there is energy released in the form of heat and light. So that's why pitta doesn't have to be burning all the time inside our body. It's just change. So most important change is happening in our digestive system, food transforming into nutrients and building blocks that's needed for our tissues, and energy as well, calories as well. So that transformation, any function of hormones, metabolic as well as reproductive hormones, any function of enzymes in the mind, any sort of focused problem solving approach, that kind of transformative thought process happens inside the mind. These all come together as pitta, or transformation function. And like vata creates more dryness and coldness like symptoms, pitta creates the heat and burning sensation like symptoms. So acid reflux or issues related to digestive system can happen with vata, pitta tendency. Pitta imbalance also causes any systemic inflammation tendency, redness, burning sensation, all the typical signs of an inflammation usually is understood as a pitta imbalance or fire imbalance. The third body type is kapha. Kapha reflects water and earth, more sort of grounded and heavy elements from the nature, and that reflects nourishment function. So function related to building up of tissue, it is related to respiratory function, it is related to memory, calmness, groundedness. So all those heavier nourishing aspects of our body, we understand it as a reflection of water and earth, and that has again imbalances related to that causes water retention, weight gain, issues related to respiratory system, mucousy tendencies, sinus related issues, allergies, etc. These are understood as kapha imbalance related issues. We have all three in our body, vata, pitta and kapha. Ideal health is a balance of three doshas, or balance of movement, metabolism and nourishment. Once we identify our nature, we can plan our diet and lifestyle to complement that. So, like I said in the example earlier, a Vata tendency person will benefit more from soup kind of preparation, warm and cooked, compared to salads. And that becomes even more important when we are in cold weather. And it is less important if you are in summer, a warm day, and you're not experiencing any signs, then you can definitely include something a bit cooling. So you first apply it to yourself to understand what is your predominant nature. There could be combinations of different factors, and then you can apply it to different changes happening in the environment, and create a sort of a very sort of moving yet focused kind of lifestyle pattern, which is not very boring, that you're not just doing the same thing every time. You're also sort of listening to what's happening inside you, listening to what's happening around you. So that's basically the three doshas.
That's fascinating, because again, it is about the balance, isn't it? It's like it doesn't matter if you are one of them. Actually, if they're not in balance and you're not respecting all of them, then that's, again, you're going to end up without that flow, without feeling a little bit stuck. So the next, thank you, Edith, for that question. And the next question she has is how weather affects the different types and changes of the season.
Right. It itself is a sort of a topic good for another hour, but
okay, let's keep it to 5 minutes.
yes, I'll keep it very, very simple. So the idea that environment affects these doshas is based on the quality. So in winter, we all experience more dryness, and the environment is cold, and it is very common to have more joint or movement related issues or vata issues in winter. You will experience the joints being more achy when the climate is dry and cold. And that's basically vata time of the year. If you anticipate that, you can take precautions, and you always sort of pay attention to it while planning diet. You'll naturally want to have warm and cooked preparations and include a little bit more healthy oils and fats into your diet in winter, rather than in summer, where it's opposite to this, quite pitta aggravating sort of situation. So you don't want to have too much of meat, too much of alcohol, too much of acidic factors in your diet. That will increase pitta related symptoms, could cause headache, could cause skin related issues, different kinds of manifestation of pitta imbalance. And kapha is predominant. It's going to be predominant now. We call it as hay fever season.
Right.
It's mucousy time of the year. That's what Ayurvedic doctors would call. So it is anticipated and understood that small things can trigger respiratory symptom in this weather. That is sort of the difficult time, and it's also kapha creates that heaviness and lethargy before spring. In the beginning part, we will feel that it is a bit sort of feels the heaviness from the kapha, and it can cause other issues related to water retention, weight gain, inflammation, or accumulation of fluids basically in the body. If we anticipate that, we can always take precaution. For example, in winter, it's recommended to do self oil application and baths regularly. And in summer, we have to make sure that there's lots of fluid. Very simple thing. Lots of fluids in our diet. In kapha sort of time, we recommend lots of, so in the hay fever season, to prevent that, we recommend lots of herbal and spiced teas, which are mucolite. A lot of ginger tea, including holy basil or tulsi tea, having black pepper in regularly in diet. So the warming spices usually help open up the channels, clear out excess fluid from the body, and that needs to be started almost like now, so that you are prepared for the
I hope Waitrose and all the online shops are now ready for the fact that you've told everyone that they should be drinking herbal teas. Yes. and lots of black pepper. It's almost like a Delia Smith moment. So thank you. That was really interesting. So Fran's asking, did you learn Sanskrit before starting to study Ayurvedic, or did you acquire it while you were learning?
Oh, very, very good question. So, generally, to study Ayurveda, you don't have to learn Sanskrit, because the first 1.5 years of studying Ayurveda is learning Sanskrit and learning Indian philosophy. We don't start medicine first. We have to undo our thinking process, which we gained during the schooling, to start learning this science. But I actually studied Sanskrit in school. That was a sort of a random event. I did not plan to do Ayurveda. It was offered in the school which I was anyway going to go, and it was interesting for me to study something other than Hindi or the local language, as my extra second language. So I studied Sanskrit before, and when I entered Ayurveda, I should say, a slight upper hand.
Slight advantage on everybody else.
Yes, in studying it, yes.
Yeah, we could go on for hours, literally hours, with this. It's been absolutely fascinating. We have one last question, which we'll get in, because I think it's a very interesting one, which is because you've been talking about this heat and cool in the body, how can Ayurvedic medicine help with fluctuating hormones or menopause?
Right. So again, it is a topic sufficient
that could be for
a good time.
Just
so
tiny.
Generally, what we understand based on the dosha concept we discussed right now, menopause is not a singular event. It is a series of changes which, from a dosha perspective, starts with more pitta, or the fire related imbalance. So before you achieve that, reach that pause where the body decides that the cycles are stopping, before that, there will be a higher intensity of pitta. So most of the symptoms will be related to heat. So sort of fluctuation in body temperature, sweating, any increase in existing inflammation or autoimmune, or any sort of long-term inflammation related issues, gut related issues, they all become aggravated due to the pitta changes that's happening naturally. As the menopause is achieved, then the body usually tilts towards vata. That's where most of the issues or concerns related to bones and joints, concerns related to sleep, insomnia or anxiety related issues, any sort of dryness, not just skin, mucous membrane, vaginal dryness. It could manifest in different forms, the dryness tendency that develops the vata. So there is this initial pitta phase, and then there will be a vata aggravated phase. It's not something that we can't control, or it will be very interesting once anybody understands their body type. For example, somebody who has a vata nature, air nature, while going through that initial phase of menopause, they'll be very pleased that they don't experience any of the heat related symptoms, because it's quite opposite to their body type. So it feels quite natural. It went like a breeze. But they should be more aware of post-menopausal joint, bone, nervous system related aspects. And when somebody has a pitta nature, and that's not related to the menopause, but generally has a pitta nature, will experience a higher sort of intensity in all the symptoms prior to menopause. And that's where the focus needs to be, in anticipating and preventing that from sort of affecting too much the quality of life. I usually believe that it is a natural transformation phase, and post menopause there is a lot of energy which was being utilized for maintaining a perfect uterine lining, now available to do lots of different things related to maintaining body health. So menopause is actually a good process that needs to be understood properly rather than worried or feared of.
That's brilliant. That's resetting every woman's mindset about menopause. It's going to embrace it, because actually once you're through it, as long as you understand your body type, you can find some coping techniques through food and lifestyle to be able to cope with it. And then afterwards, you've got like all this extra resource.
Yeah, because creating a new life is almost a divine sort of function, and to sort of do it properly, we can't afford to have a lining or an organ which is not brand new. So body takes that extra effort. Nature puts that extra effort into creating a brand new place every month in anticipation, and that's an extra energy effort. And there is no wonder that every woman will feel during the cycle of hormonal change dips and ups in energy. That is because there is a huge intense activity happening behind the scenes, which we are trying to ignore. But I would say most highly advanced sort of female athletes and all understands how the body changes and plans their activity based on that phases of energy that comes through. And it's pretty much easy to define once we slow down and pay attention to what's happening
the conversation
inside.
with our body.
So none of this is actually any disadvantage or bad. It's actually just my teacher used to give an example of a snake and a snake charmer. I'm scared of snakes. I've seen people playing with snakes for a living as a performing art. And my teacher used to ask us, what is the difference between you and that man? What is the difference? That he's not afraid of snake. The only difference is knowledge. He understands the snake. If we know something, the fear actually dissipates. And if there's a fear, that's to be immediately understood as a need to understand something a bit more. If you're scared of anything, it's just that you don't understand it enough. If somebody is worried about the vaccine, you don't understand the vaccine well. Or if you're worried about the virus, we don't understand it enough. So once we understand anything, the fear transforms into that extra knowledge that we can play with, and we can understand how
it becomes a superpower, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Awareness is a superpower. So, and when people say to me, "Oh, I'm frightened of doing that," I'll say, "Do it, because you're going to. The minute you've done it, you've got increased awareness. Even if you fail, it doesn't matter, because you've just learned something which is now giving you a superpower. So next time when you're faced with that, you've got all these extra resources. So why not have a go?" I have a fear of the known, as everyone knows. So I don't like, if I'm faced with something, like I was on Sunday, asked to do something I'd never done before, I was like, oh yeah, I'm in. Because I'm going to learn something now. I'm going to learn something about myself. I'm going to learn something about that, which not only gives me a superpower inside myself to achieve more that I want to achieve myself personally, but it also gives me something more to share that experience with the world and help other people be more of what they want to be. So for me, from this conversation, I've gathered that it's a conversation with yourself that helps you be more of what you want to be. And all of these are opportunities.
Yeah, and continue to hold on to your interest to learn. Never stop learning.
Yeah, lifetime learning.
Yes.
It's been absolutely fascinating. We could literally talk for about another 3 hours, but people will fall asleep.
Yes, and we
They'll
have to be
go
aware
off and have lunch, won't they? And other things. No, it's been absolutely brilliant, and I'd love to have another conversation with you towards the end of the year, once we've gone through the next phases, just to understand, as we're going into like October time, when we're going through another phase of the seasons, but also a phase of this development of how we're coping, to see what other questions people have and what other insights that you can bring to that. It's been brilliant.
Yeah, anybody who's listening, if they have any question, you can always sort of write to me, instead of say going ahead with booking an appointment. If you don't understand what is this and what it's supposed to do, feel free to send me a quick email, and I will be happy to guide you as well.
That's brilliant. What I'll do is we'll pop your email into the sidebar, into the side chat here, and then it will always be there. So people will, whoever's watching on catch up, will be able to watch it. We'll also pop it onto the Facebook live, so everyone will have a copy of your email. But yeah, you can book in to see Dr. Mathew here. Do you do virtual meetings as well on Zoom?
Yeah, at the moment it's all virtual, and in future there will be both. I don't think the virtual can stop, because during the pandemic, all my appointments have moved from Sussex area to everywhere, so I can't stop. Now it's from all over.
Yeah, we have the same thing. It's like we were just doing real-time meetings. Now we have to carry on doing virtual because we have an audience all over the world. So they would be very unhappy if we suddenly went, oh no, we're just back in Sussex.
Yeah, this change is, these kinds of changes will happen naturally. It'll be very interesting to see how it will be an exciting journey. I wouldn't say it's a negative thing. It will be exciting journey ahead. Just don't lose touch with yourself. Just continue the conversation. That's all.
It's that. Keep having the active conversation with yourself and notice what you notice. And now you understand the 3 doshas, then it's easier to understand how to keep the balance if you feel that you've gone slightly out of sync, and that will help you get back into and remain in creative flow. So no, it's been absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for your time. We are all immensely grateful, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon. If whoever's been watching us on Facebook and on YouTube Live, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to everyone who's joined us here live and have asked your questions. It's been brilliant. And we'll see you here again next week. Let me just tell you who we've got next week. We've got Graham Cullis and Elaine Tobin, both artists, both working within the mental health space as well, just considering empathy and how you bring empathy to your practice, and how Elaine particularly has been a victim of some bullying, and she coped with that in a really empathetic and emotionally intelligent way to help those who felt that it was appropriate to bully her. So yeah, that's going to be a really interesting conversation. And Graham has just moved back. Sorry, I disappeared briefly there. I'm back.
Yes.
Carry on the goodbye. Sorry, the signal. That sometimes happens at the end of these talks. The signal.
I think one of the talks I was listening to also had a brief pause, but that gave me the information that you'll be back.
Yeah, I'll be back. Yeah, I know. It sometimes happens right at the end. So thank you all so much. Oh, we have one little question in there. Done answering. Oh, no, it was the same one. Thank you all so much for joining us, and anyone watching on catch up, then if you put into Google Dr. Mathew Anchery and Ayurvedic medicine, you will find him and you'll be able to book an appointment. So yeah, thanks so much, and we'll see you all next week. Okay, bye for now.
Thank you, Leslie. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.